Vicious killer Ted Bundy. Growing up, Ted Bundy was a pleasant, gregarious, and brilliant young man. He was born in Burlington, Vermont on November 24, 1946, and he grew up there. Despite this, by the time Bundy was a teenager living in the state of Washington, he had exhibited indications of the savage serial killer he would become. In interviews, he recalled being antisocial and wandering the streets in search of discarded pornography or open windows through which he could spy on unsuspecting women. He had a lengthy juvenile record for theft that was expunged when he turned 18. By 1972, he had graduated from college and had extraordinary promise for a future career in the legal or political sectors. This profession, however, was cut short in 1974, when he discovered his true passion: physically assaulting people. His first confirmed victim occurred in 1974. First near his home in Washington, then further east in Utah and Colorado, and finally in Florida, he targeted young and attractive college women. He migrated from one state to the next. By putting his arm or leg in a sling or phony cast and walking with crutches, Bundy would attract these women. Then, he would prey upon them. He would utilize his charisma and pretend to be disabled to convince his victims to help him carry books or unload his truck. Before carrying out his attacks, he was also known to impersonate police officials and firefighters in order to gain the trust of his victims. As they approached his 1968 Volkswagen Beetle in tan, he would attack them with a crowbar or a pipe and strike them over the head. After assaulting his victims, he would bind them to render them defenseless and then force them into the vehicle. As he fled the site of the crime, Bundy had removed the passenger seat and placed it in the back seat or trunk of the vehicle, leaving an empty space on the floor for his victim to lie down in. Bundy was able to rape and murder a huge number of women using this method. In the majority of instances, he murdered his victims by smothering or beating them to death, and then he mutilated their bodies. After that, he prolonged the events by returning to the location where the bodies had been dumped or even taking them inside his home so he could experience more sexual pleasure. In some horrible situations, he displayed their severed heads in his room and slept with their bodies until the stench became unbearable. As the number of victims grew and witness testimonies spread, an increasing number of people reported Bundy to the authorities as a suspect who fit the descriptions. Despite this, the police never considered him a suspect due to his plainly trustworthy reputation and well-kept appearance. He was able to remain undetected for an even longer amount of time by mastering the art of leaving virtually no traces that could be tracked by the still rudimentary 1970s forensics techniques. On August 16, 1975 in Utah, after evading capture for what seemed like an eternity, Bundy was finally apprehended for the first time. A comprehensive inspection of the vehicle revealed suspicious items such as masks, handcuffs, and rope, but there was no direct evidence linking him to the crimes. A few months later, he was rearrested for kidnapping and assaulting one of his victims, but he remained under relentless surveillance until his release. During that period, he was constantly monitored. A year later, after being brought from Utah to Colorado for a second trial, Bundy avoided capture. However, he was captured within a week after his escape. On December 30, 1977, he evaded detection for a second time, and after traveling to Florida and resuming his homicidal spree, he was eventually executed. Before being arrested for a second time on February 15, 1978 for a traffic violation, he raped or murdered at least 6 other victims, 5 of whom were Florida State University students. He was finally arrested. He was subsequently found guilty of his crimes and executed by electric chair on January 24, 1989. Although Bundy declared at the time of his death that he was responsible for 30 murders, the precise number of persons he murdered is still unknown.